Yeah, this lesson we're going to explore mindfulness of emotions. And last time, when we were talking about thoughts, we had mentioned that the evolutionary purpose of thoughts are to help us solve problems, right? They're like this amazing tool that nature gave us to be able to solve problems and make us the most powerful creatures on the planet. But there can be like a little of a dark side, because then thoughts can turn everything into problems, right? So bring that back around to emotions. What do you guys suppose is the evolutionary purpose of our emotions? Why do we feel stuff, and why do we feel it so strongly? It's not a rhetorical question, I'm actually asking. Thoughts? Yeah, Jenna? Because we're dwelling on it?
I saw something that said that emotion is usually like 9 seconds. Go on really high.
Yeah.
I think you said it too.
Yeah.
So maybe because we're just constantly putting on our energy we just keep
Re-triggering the emotion, right? Yeah. That's, our thinking has that ability to, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. So yeah, that's part of the reason why we feel it so strongly. But in terms of like how it could possibly benefit us, right? In terms of something that nature gave us for use. Karen?
Like a reward, like if you feel happy doing something, it helps your body keep wanting to do that.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, to springboard off of that, emotions are our biggest motivators. You know, it's almost hard to think, what would we do, what would we want to do without them, right? What would drive us? I mean, just think of how much love or fear or anger motivate our decisions, right? So, yeah, so just to use a few examples, right? When we feel scared, we feel motivated to fight or flee, right? Which helps us possibly stick around longer, fight another day. When we feel love, we take care of those who depend on us, right? Help them live another day. When we feel hungry, we eat. That one's pretty obvious. When we feel lonely, we seek out relationships and alliances. Again, helps us survive and thrive in a world. If we feel guilty, we apologize and repair and preserve those relationships and alliances. If we feel angry, we take action that needs to be taken in the world in many different forms. But and if we feel sad, we often will stay home or do nothing and conserve resources, right? So this all points to this very interesting fact that we almost never talk about, that emotions are these little friends that are telling us what needs we need to meet, right? They're these little, little helpers that are alerting us, okay, we need this, we need that, we need this. And so I just want to clarify, when I say needs, it's very common that we think of needs as something that if we don't have, we actually die, right? I'm broadening that a little bit, and typically in psychology, we broaden the definition of needs to anything that helps support our survival or flourishing of our well-being, right? And so, if you feel a strong emotion, typically the reason is it's telling us that there's some unmet need that we should meet, right? And as Tara said, when we've met our needs, right, we feel the good stuff, right? We feel content, we feel happy, we feel joy, right? So, just want to also clarify, I think it makes it a little bit easier to define what are these major needs that most humans experience. There's a psychologist named Manfred Max Neef who identifies 9 main human needs. The first one is the one we usually think of first, right, which is subsistence, the stuff we need to put in our bodies in order for us to continue to survive, right? But then we also have safety, so both physical and psychological safety, right? It's difficult, we definitely do not thrive in situations and environments where our physical well-being doesn't feel secure. I think about the situation in Ukraine, for example, right? Connection is another huge human need, right? To know that we are bonded with family and friends. Understanding, right? So this idea that our internal worlds, our internal reality is seen and understood and reflected by the people around us, right? How important is that? Something that we didn't get a heck of a lot of during the pandemic for a lot of reasons, right? And we felt that loss of understanding and connection. Contribution, right? We have a very strong human need to contribute. You all are in school right now, and a big part of the reason why you're here, obviously, is to be able to make money so you have substance, but also to contribute to something bigger than yourself, right? It's a powerful driver. Recreation, we all need to be able to chill out from time to time. It's important. Creativity, we feel driven to create things that exist in the world and could possibly even exist beyond our life. Belonging, right? How much do we belong to some group or community or tribe? And lastly, anyone want to guess? What's this list missing? Freedom. We need freedom, right? We need this sense that we have control over our own lives and are able to make the decisions we need to make and live the life that we want to live, right? So when I talk about needs during this talk, mostly I'm referring to these 9 needs that I just mentioned here. Okay, so this leads to a very interesting question. Do we usually, as a society in general, treat our emotions as friends that are alerting us to meet some need? What's your intuition say? Yeah, usually not, especially if they're difficult or uncomfortable emotions or feelings, right? It's not an illness, but just some like post-dinner something happening there that's not. I'm gonna edit this out. Yeah, especially the uncomfortable emotions, we don't treat them like helpers that are alerting us to our needs. And this is really, really tragic, right? It's tragic because suddenly 2 really bad things are happening, right? When we have this impression of our emotional world as being something that needs to be severed or pushed away and that we only need to feel good all the time, all right? It's doubly tragic because 1, we're disconnecting little parts of ourselves, right? Every time that we reject an emotion, right? And this, we start to feel fractured, right? We feel a little bit less whole. And not only do we feel a little bit fractured and we feel less whole, but whatever that emotion was telling us that we need, that need's not going to get met now, right? So how many of you know somebody, for example, who is either in a very unhappy job or a very unhappy relationship or some other unhappy life circumstance, is feeling sad, feeling depressed, feeling unfulfilled, right? And instead of asking that emotion, what am I needing? Connection, contribution, belonging, right? Instead of asking that emotion what it's needing, they numb themselves with distractions, with alcohol, with drugs, both prescription and illegal, you know? Most of us know somebody like that, and I certainly do. And there's a certain tragedy to it because if they just listened for a second, you know, it's telling them something that may be difficult, right? That you have to deal with something that's really big in your life, maybe a job or a relationship. But it's there for a reason. And so when we take this, you know, decision to distract ourselves or numb out, it's just not serving us, right? It's not serving us in this one chance at life that we get to live. So it's further interesting to ask the question, why do we feel this way, right? So how did we get to this place where, you know, this thing that nature gave us to help us thrive is something that we're actually, rejecting. For one, it's true, like, negative emotions do feel icky, right? I mean, say the obvious first, right? They don't feel good. But we've also really gotten to this place where we live in a culture that has really defined itself around feeling good, right? Like how many commercials a day are somehow around the thing that you need to feel good, to have the perfect life, to be glamorous, right? That creates at least this image that the best lives are the ones where we push away all of our pain and hurt, the things that don't feel good, right? And I think even in like spiritual communities, there's this sense that, like a misconception, that enlightenment actually means you never feel anything bad again, right? I was guilty of this misconception for a long time. I thought that that's what, the great masters do. They never feel another negative emotion. But I now see how silly that is. It's so silly because our emotions are baked into they're baked into our circuitry, right? They're baked into our brains. Like, for example, I love to say this saying, enlightenment doesn't make your amygdala disappear, right? The amygdala is a little almond-sized thing in your brain that makes you feel fear, right? That's all still gonna be there, right? It's still gonna hurt when you lose somebody, right? But what is actually enlightenment is that you have developed this new relationship with your emotions. So that instead of having this kind of antagonistic, like constantly everyday fighting boxing match between you and what you're feeling, you're actually having this productive, cooperative relationship so that you're working together to meet the needs of your life. Even if it means facing some difficult things, like maybe I'm not in the right job, or maybe I'm not in the right relationship. Okay, pause there for a second and offer the chance for you to ask any clarifying questions. Clear so far? Okay. So, how do we start to change this relationship, right? We've lived this way for so long, most of us. How do we begin to develop this cooperative, productive relationship with the stuff inside, even the stuff that doesn't feel so good all the time? And I think it really comes down to two main steps that anyone can start practicing anytime, including right now, in this moment. First, it's inviting in whatever it is, right? So it could be in meditation, could be sitting in a car, taking a moment to just invite in and sit with whatever is in that moment. Could be you feel great. Could be you feel really joyful, awesome. Could be there's something there that feels a little bit icky, maybe a little bit of anxiety, maybe a little worry, maybe a little bit of sadness, maybe a little bit of loneliness, right? But invite it in and say, I don't want you to change. I'm not asking you to change at all. You're okay being exactly how you are. And once you're there, then you do step two, which is just pose a question. What is it that you're needing? Right? What are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to teach me? And it almost reminds me of like, a relationship that a parent has with a baby, right? The baby's only way to communicate is to scream, is cry, right? Your emotion's only way to communicate is to scream and cry, right? But you don't take the baby and put it outside, right? You don't push the baby away and say, I'll deal with you after my glass of Chardonnay, right? What you do is you hold the baby and you say, what are you needing, right? And I wonder what it would be like, what the world would be like if we all responded to our emotional life that way, right? If we're all taught this from when we're actually babies, to not, push away the stuff that we're feeling and make a home for it. One of the things that I'm most excited about being a parent is, anytime she gets a boo-boo, anytime she feels bummed out, just sit together really quick and be like, let's make a home for it, right? So that she knows no matter what, even if it's uncomfortable, she can hold that instead of pushing it away. I think it's neat. Okay, when you ask this question, what do you need? Sometimes the answer will be incredibly obvious. It'll be immediate, right? Your little shame might be like, yeah, man, you just really regret what you were saying to your friend the other day. You probably should apologize. And that's cool. It's nice when it happens that easily, right? Sometimes there won't be an obvious answer. Sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes, especially if it's a very old emotion, it needs some time to trust you because you have been rejecting it for so long, right? It's a very, very natural process. And sometimes it may be a little bit too strong of an emotion to have an answer right away. And that's totally fine. Don't be like, what's wrong with me? I need the answer, right? It'll come eventually. Almost always does. And at the very least, what you've done now is you've transformed your relationship with that emotion. You're at least buddies. You're at least on good terms with each other. And that in itself is transformative, right? Because you're no longer having these little fractured pieces of yourself that make you not whole, Okay, I want to emphasize some of the things you guys were saying today, that the emotional, and you said that the emotional world that we experience is often very much amplified by our thinking. And there's this psychologist named Stephen Hayes who has just a very great analogy for this. He calls it clean pain versus dirty pain. I use this all the time, and I think it's kind of brilliant. So clean pain is the pain that we all experience just by virtue of being a living human being, right? Once we're out in this world, we're gonna feel some parts of that because of how we're wired, because it's baked into our system. So for example, if you lose a loved one, you're gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt, right? If you lose a partner, it's gonna hurt. If you say something you regret, it's gonna hurt. If you stub your toe, it's gonna hurt. There's parts of being human that's it's just there, right? Dirty pain is all the amplified pain that we add on top of the clean pain based upon our thinking, right? And that thinking is usually very much about ourselves, like what that pain we're experiencing means about us as people, right? So for example, clean pain. I'm sad because my partner and I broke up. Very reasonable experience, right? Dirty pain. I am sad that my partner and I broke up, and this must mean that I'm a total loser and no one will ever love me again. Right? How much did you just double, triple, quadruple your pain just by adding that totally unnecessary addition to the end of your experience, right? So much, right? And then how many more times do you multiply it the next time you think it, and the next time you think it, and the next time you think it? And then like that possibly leading on to other thoughts like, I'm broken for even thinking this way, right? It's endless. It's endless how much your head can do that. Okay, another example, clean pain. I'm bummed because I studied hard but bombed the test. Hopefully it's not too relevant for anyone. Dirty pain. I'm bummed because I studied hard but bombed the test, which means I must be a dummy and I'm not cut out for my major. Totally relatable. I felt that way after bombing physics tests, especially my sophomore year of college. And totally unnecessary. I just added a whole bunch of pain. How does one experience on one test say anything about who I am as a whole student in a physics major or, a PA major, whatever it is that you want to become in this world? One more example. Clean pain. I feel bad because I lied to my mom. Dirty pain. I feel bad because I lied to my mom, which means I must be a rotten person who doesn't deserve to be happy. Right? Totally resonates with your story about the dog, right? Clean pain, I had to give my dog back to the foster. Dirty pain, I had to give my dog back to the foster, and I must be just evil for even thinking that that was the right decision, right? But you caught yourself. Okay, so in many ways, right, it's not ridiculous to say that a big part of the art of living, right, the art of this life that we have, is to learn to accept, hold, make a home for our clean pain, which is the inevitable stuff that we can't, get rid of, while also minimizing the amount of dirty pain that we add on top of it, right? Like if there's one thing that we do in life, it should be learning to really accept our clean pain and not piling on all this thinking about what it means about us as people and amplifying the hurt. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay, so we've really focused here on some negative emotions, and I want to take a second here to talk about positive emotions, because they're lovely. They're here too, right? So I hinted at this in the beginning, but the cool thing, the kind of almost magical thing about actually paying attention to the tough stuff is that it reminds you what you're needing, which then lets you meet those needs. And when you meet those needs, what's left is the goodness, the contentedness, the joy, and the happiness, right? So it's almost like you pay a little bit in having to feel really just hold and experience something that's negative, but what you get out of it is much more frequent contentedness. Now imagine the opposite, where you're never meeting your own needs. Those feelings very rarely have a chance to emerge, right? Yeah, and then once they do emerge, because you're not thinking about this might go away, oh, how long is this going to last? Oh, right, no, it's going to all fall apart immediately, or I'm going to sabotage this situation, or whatever it is, because that's getting checked. Not only do you feel the good stuff more often, but you feel it a little bit longer, right, before it goes away because of this guy doing his thing, There's a funny story that I enjoy, that my meditation teacher, the guy who heads this program that I'm in, he tells a story about this super type A CEO who's pretty miserable, not a good dad, not a good husband, tense, unhappy. And he goes to my teacher, and he's like, in meditation, I just felt something, I experienced something, it was really weird, it's very uncomfortable, I need to talk to you about it. He's like, well, what is it? What are you experiencing? He's like, I don't know, I think it might be happy. It's funny, but it's also just kind of, what does this imply? It implies this guy who got super successful by the standards of our life so rarely feels happy that he was confused about what it actually was and had to ask somebody about it, Okay, so I want to go into a little bit more detail about how it is that we establish a practice in life where we are better able to hold what hurts, right? And basically to hold everything, not just what hurts, but everything with just a loving, kind awareness. One tip that I have that I think is very helpful is it often helps to start with the breath as an anchor that we did when we did mindfulness of the breath, because you get a little bit more concentrated. And when you're a little bit more concentrated, your thinking is often less wild. The little monkey in your head is settled down a bit. And it makes it so that there's a little bit more stability for you to hold those emotions, especially if they get a little bit more challenging, more intense. And then once you're in that place where you have a little bit more of a steady awareness because you've had this anchor of breath, then you can just start noticing what's there, right? Is it joy? Is it frustration? Are you just bored? Are you feeling a little lonely? Are you feeling a little bummed out? And as you let it be there and don't ask it to change, a lot of times it does a couple things, right? Sometimes it'll disappear, it'll just kind of evaporate, right? Leaving behind this little trail of peace, right? Sometimes you watch it and it evolves into something else, right? So, look, for example, it might be something like, feeling bored. Oh, I just got distracted. Angry at myself because I just got distracted. I just noticed that I was angry at myself for getting distracted, so I must be getting good at this. I'm proud, right? There might be this just cascade of these flowing emotions, which is, some of you are smiling right now. It's kind of silly, right? There's this humorous nature to the absurdity and the silliness of our inner world sometimes, which is also a wonderful thing because we take it a little bit less seriously when we just see our emotional world just being kind of silly. Want to acknowledge that in this process, sometimes really heavy stuff can come up, right? The stuff that's really, really challenging. And I say this, and even a guy who's meditated since he was 17, it's still tough for me sometimes. There might be some kind of emotion that's feels like at the cusp of what you can handle, right? When that happens, one strategy that I found very helpful is to channel someone or something in your life that you either love so much, right? So it's something that's so dear to you, or that loves you very much, right? So you can kind of fill yourself with that feeling of unconditional love for a second. And then with that feeling, actually hold that emotion, right? As if it's you holding that thing that you love, or that person that is your, ideal or representation of love. You embody holding that thing with that same kind of tenderness, okay? Because here's the thing: if it feels that bad, it probably needs it. A lot of the really hard stuff that we feel, it's either been rejected for a long time, or it's the result of some sort of trauma, anything from mild to really, really intense trauma, And so that usually means it needs some TLC, right? And so you might not even want to go further with it beyond just holding it, so it begins to trust you that you're not going to reject it and push it away. That can lead to even, sometimes we feel stuff that's even stronger where you're just sure you're not ready and you're sure you'll be overwhelmed. That may happen too. But the beauty of this process is you have control of the levers, right? You get to decide how deep you want to go and how long you want to go, right? So when you feel something that totally might overwhelm you, maybe you say, I'm going to sit with you for 10 seconds, right? With that full-on tender love that I have for this experience. And you say, okay, after that 10 seconds, I get up, I'll go take my walk, have my glass of wine, whatever it may be. And then next time you try to do it for, 30 seconds, maybe a minute, right? A lot of the stuff we feel is old, right? And so sometimes it takes a good amount of time to re-invite it back in, reintegrate it. And I should also say sometimes help helps, right? So in other words, sometimes working with some of these emotions with a therapist or with another kind of professional who can create spaces and process stuff such that you're able to hold those really difficult traumas, and again, don't let the mind add in dirty pain, like I'm weak for not being able to handle this, I'm a bad meditator for not being able to handle this. Don't add anything negative. It is exactly where it's supposed to be. And you're just reminding yourself that the whole goal of this process, right? All we're here to do is to change the relationship that we have with our emotions and learn to embrace them. Invite the monsters in for tea, I like to say. And the more we do that, I truly feel, both from my own experiences, my own traumas from my past, and my experiences in healing them, and trying so much, including the distractions that are less savory, right? I've really come to realize true healing only really happens by witnessing what hurts and accepting it unconditionally with as much love as we possibly can. And if there's something we could do to serve it, that pain, that wound, we do it. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But the healing comes in integrating it back in, inviting it back in, and just being able to hold it and witness it. And through that process, life becomes lighter, right? And these other feelings like joy and love and curiosity and wonder and awe and inspiration, creativity, they come up more often. I can say this from personal experience. I can say it from the experience of literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that have in one way or another. I mean, meditation is not the only way. There's many, many different practices, including prayer, that have gotten people to this point. But healing comes from holding our wounds. Yeah. That is my talk. And we'll take a couple minutes to practice here, some mindfulness of emotions. And then, as usual, we'll do 5 or 10 minutes of questions at the end. Okay? Okay, cool. All right. You cold? I'm cold. I wish I could control the heat. Okay. So, as usual, let's find a posture that feels both alert and dignified and confident and strong, right? A lot of times when we do work with emotions, you want a posture that feels strong enough to hold it. You know, you want to embody that feeling of strength, you know? And if it feels comfortable, close your eyes. Putting your attention again on your breathing. Just watching your body breathe. Remember, you can put your attention wherever you feel it strongest. So maybe it's the breath, maybe it's the chest, maybe it's the stomach or diaphragm area. But wherever you feel your breathing strongest, just let your attention fall there and just watch it. Just experience your body breathing. again, no judgment if you notice your mind wanders. Just very gently and kindly bring it back to the experience of breathing. We're just trying to settle the monkey mind a little bit before we open up to what we're feeling. When you're ready, open up your attention to the whole world of your emotions and your feelings. And just start noticing what's there. Be feeling peaceful from focusing on the breath. There could be a little bit of anxiety there. There could be a little worry. Some impatience maybe. Or it could be just joy and openness. There's no right thing to feel. The whole goal here is just to be aware and let it be at the same time. Without asking it to be any different than what it is. You might notice that when you put your attention on a certain emotion, it will slowly dissolve, just kind of disappear. Or you might notice that it just evolves into something else. Just stay with it. Kind of just this curious and kind and loving attention. Sometimes it just sticks around. Doesn't seem like it changes much. Sometimes it's helpful to notice that it's not the whole body that feels the emotion. Sometimes it's just a certain spot. What does it feel like? What is it made of? Where's its edges? just getting to know it. Now, I'm going to ask to think of something very joyful, something that is a positive memory, something that is a happy memory. Or it doesn't have to be a memory. It could also just be something that you can imagine that just would make you happy. Joyful and light. Just see what that feels like. What does lightness feel like? What does joy feel like? Sometimes you might feel your heart activated a little bit. Little softness in the heart. Be a sense of love for everything. Again, there's no right way to experience this. I'm just offering some possibilities. Stay with your experience, whatever that may be. Now, maybe think of something that's a little uncomfortable, like something maybe that happened recently or a concern that you have. And it's important that this isn't like a 10 on the intensity scale. It's like more like a 4 or 5. Maybe a conflict that you had recently. Try to hold that too. Just whatever that feels like. If the image of a mother holding a child helps, use that image. The image of sitting down for tea with a monster helps. You can use that image too. The idea is you're You're making room. You're making home for something that feels a little uncomfortable. Maybe you can just pose that question very gently, very kindly. Do you need anything? Do you have anything to teach me? Tell me. Maybe there won't be an answer, and that's totally okay. But at least you're holding it now. Maybe all it really wants is to be held. Maybe it needs to be forgiven. Maybe it just needs to be loved. Just let it be there for a little bit. Take some deep breaths and just breathe into it. Sometimes it helps to put your hand on your belly or your heart and just say, thank you. Or it's gonna be okay. Just take 10 more seconds or so just to open your awareness to whatever's happening inside of you. No particular memory or feeling, just whatever's there. Just witnessing. Before we close, maybe just thank yourself or give yourself a pat on the back for being brave enough to hold something that was uncomfortable. And for trying something new that's a little uncomfortable. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so I'd love to hear either just an observation about the experience or a question that came up either in the meditation or during the talk. Yeah.
As far as you said, picture how you can see with the monster or whatever. I created a table that has the main emotions that I usually feel right now, now stress, burnout, happiness, anger.
Yeah.
And they kind of sat there. They're faceless for now because they don't really say anything. But
Yeah.
they kind of just sat there. I'm like, well, I know these four exist right now.
Oh, that's so cool.
Brother wants to join, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that experience will evolve at all with the faces thing. If as you practice this, they like reveal themselves more or something. Thanks. Any other observations or questions? Yeah, buddy.
When you said to think a negative emotion that is around a level, like 3 or 4, I was literally upset because my cat destroyed like a couple, like several pages worth of notes yesterday or today. Like he just like struck the water and my cat was right on top of it. They're my chemistry. So I was just reading stuff and then I would come down and I would go, because it's a cat, what are you gonna do about it?
Mm-hmm.
But then while I was meditating on that, I was like seeing him in my head, just kind of like he was almost the emotion, just prancing around the kitchen, reminding me, I've got to clean up after myself because otherwise it's going to pop stuff up. But then it made me realize that it was just literally a teardrop in like the vast amount of notes that I have at this point, not just in chemistry, but like all together and all my work stuff that I was like, okay, well, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Because most of the time I take pictures and upload it on Canvas anyways, but I don't know if anyone else can relate, but like I worked so hard on those notes and I still need them and they're gone.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we can all relate to that experience.
But
Yeah. Or the one that you can't even blame on your cat. It's only your fault because you didn't save your paper and like your computer died, right? And you lost it. Yeah.
So that's what I sat with.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there's an interesting thing that when you sit with an emotion sometimes and it like softens a little bit and thaws, whatever analogy you want to use, it helps you take better perspective, right? So then you'll get a thought like, in the grand scheme of things, it's only a couple of notes, where instead of it just dominating your head. Cool. One more, either observation or question?